Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaskaram. On the sacred day of Guru Purnima, I would like to start this session on Indian knowledge systems to share my 2 cents of whatever understanding and learnings I have been carrying. And as discussed a couple of days back, this will be focusing more on the Indian philosophical systems. And I would like to request you to watch this and do share your constructive feedback. Looking forward for more constructive discussion going forward. Thank you. Hari Om. Om Namah Shivaya. Start with a small prayer. Illalbom alvinevom annai vaitil piranda tollaibom poga therumbom nalla gunamadiga maamarunai goburathil vittirukkum ganapathiye kaithorudakkal காட்டு வழி போனாலும் கல்லர் பயமானாலும் கெட்டு வழிகாலனார் வந்து கிட்டிடினும் நாட்டமுடன் நம்பிக்கை உண்டே விநாயகனார் தும்பிக்கை உண்டே துணை உருவாய் அருவாய் உலதாய் இலதாய் மறுவாய் மலராய் மணியாய் ஒளியாய் கருவாய் உயிராய் கதியாய் விதியாய் குருவாய் வருவாய் அருள்வாய் குகனே. தனம் தரும் கல்வி தரும் ஒரு நாளும் தளர்வறியா மனம் தரும் தெய்வ வடிவும் தரும் நெஞ்சில் மஞ்சமில்லா இனம் தரும் நல்லனை எல்லாம் தரும் அன்பர் என்பவர்க்கே கணம் தரும் பூங்குழலால் அபிராமி கடைக்கண்களே. அம்மையே அப்பா பிலாமணியே அன்பில் உழைந்த ஆரமுதே பொய்மையே பெருக்கி பொழுதுனை சுருக்கும் புதுதலை புலையனேன் தனக்கும் செம்மையே ஆய சிவபதம் அளித்த செல்வமே சிவபெருமானே இம்மையே உன்னை சிக்கென பிடித்தேன் எங்கிருந்தருள்தினியே. गुरुर् ब्रह्मा गुरुर् विष्णु गुरुदेवो महेश्वर गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्मं तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः. गुरुवे सर्वलोकानां विषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्री दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः. வேண்டத்தக்கதறிவோய் நீ வேண்டும் முழுதும் தருவோய் நீ வேண்டிய என்மால் அறியோய் நீ வேண்டி என்னை பணி கொண்டாய் வேண்டி நீ யாதல் செய்தாய் யானும் அதுவும் வேண்டுமல்லால் வேண்டும் பரிசொன்று உண்டு எனில் அதுவும் உந்த நுட்பமன்றோ. ஞான ஆனந்தமயம் தேவம் நிர்மல ஸ்படிகா கிருதம் ஆதாரம் சர்வ வித்யானாம் சேகரீபோபாஸ்மஹே. अच्युतं केशवं रामनारायणं कृष्णदामोदरं वासुदेवं भजे श्रीधरं माधवं गोपिका वल्लभं जानकी नायकं रामचन्द्रं भजे. பச்சை மாமலை போல் மேனி பழவாய் கமலச்செங்கன் அச்சுத அமரரேறி ஆயத்தம் குழுந்தே என்னும் இச்சுவை தவிர யான் போல் இந்திர லோகமாலும் அச்சுவை பெரிதும் வேண்டிய நரமான உலானே. புத்திர்பலம் யசோதைரியம் நிர்பயத்வம் அரோகதா ஜாட்டியம் வாக்குடும் சன்மன் சன்னம்பவே. ஓம் சுவாமியே சனமையப்பா ஓம் சுவாமியே சனமையப்பா ஓம் சுவாமியே சனமையப்பா. நின்றும் அறியாமலும் தெரிந்தும் தெரியாமல் செய்த சகல குற்றங்களையும் பொறுத்து காத்து ரட்சிக்க வேண்டும். ஓம் சத்தியமான பொண்ணு 18ஆம் படி மேல் வாழும் இல்லாளி வீரன் வீரமணி கண்டன் காசி ராமேஸ்வரம் மலையாளம் பாண்டியாளும் அடக்கியாளும் ஓம் ஹரிஹரசுதன் ஆனந்த சித்தன் ஐயன் ஐயப்ப சுவாமியே சனமையப்பா. பிரகாசவலலா திவ்ய திருவடிகளே சரணம். வள்ளல் மலரடி வாழ்க வாழ்க. எல்லா உயிர்களும் இன்புற்று வாழ்க. அருட்பெரும் ஜோதி அருட்பெரும் ஜோதி தனி பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெரும் ஜோதி. ஞானத்தால் தொழுவார் உனை ஞானிகள் ஞானத்தால் தொழுவார் உனை நாணலேன் ஞானத்தால் தொழுவார் தொழுகண்டு ஞானத்தால் உனத்தாலே நானும் தொழுவேன். ஸ்ரீ குருபியோ நமக. Let me try to share the deck that I am going to present. I hope you are able to see the screen. So this is the topic, as I said, we'll be discussing in this series. So this is going to be a look at the philosophical inquiry. Then I just wanted to start with a small prayer. சிவன் அவன் என் சிந்தையில் நின்று அதனால் அவனருளாலே அவன்தாள் வணங்கி சிந்தை மகிழ சிவபுராணம் தன்னை முந்தை வினை முழுதும் ஓய உரைப்பேன் யான். असतोमा सद्गमय तमसोमा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा मृदंगमय ओम शांति शांति शांति. So this is going to be the larger agenda that we'll be covering in a series of videos and video sessions. So first we'll be looking at the general introduction to philosophy, followed by the major classification of the philosophical schools, and then the philosophy of science. Each of this will have their own subtopics. Like for example, we'll be talking about what is philosophy, what are its branches under the general introduction. And then we will be moving on to the different philosophical schools based on geographical classification, ontological, epistemological, and theological classification. So within the geographical classifications, we will look at the Oriental, which is the Eastern school of thought, and the Western school of thought. Within Eastern school, again, we will be looking on the Indian traditions. Within Indian traditions, specifically on the Hindu Dharma. Of course, we'll be looking at the Buddha and Jaina also. Within Hindu Dharma, both the Vedic and the Agamic stream of philosophies we'll be taking a look. And within the Vedic schools, the Darshanas. And similarly, within the Agamic schools, the various schools of Saiva philosophies. Then we'll be discussing about the philosophy of science. So with this brief overview of the agenda, I will jump into the topic of what is philosophy. So let us first understand philosophy from its term, basically the epistemological roots of philosophy. So I have shared both the Greek and the Indian versions of the epistemological roots. So in India, philosophy is called as Tattva Darshana. So Tattva means suchness, and Darshana means a vision or a perspective or a view. So Tattva Darshana is a view of the suchness or thatness or of the existence of whatever is there as it is. So trying to understand it. And similarly, philosophy is the English term is derived from its Greek sources, which is again defined from philosophia, split into philos means love, and sophia means wisdom. So it is a love for wisdom. So these are the basic roots to which the philosophy epistemologically derives from. So during the course of this sessions, I will be sharing as much of testimonial points as possible from subject matter experts, domain experts, scholars, acharyas, etc. And wherever possible, I'll try to quote the original text in the original language, whether it is Sanskrit or Tamil or as the case may be, followed by the transliteration of that in the IAST form, and translation from a scholar. So this is the pattern I'll look. For example, here one of the formal definitions of philosophy is given by the subject matter expert Pula Tirupati Raju. So in his book called The Philosophical Traditions of India, where he defines darshana as seeing, looking at, viewing, and therefore sight, look, or view. So he is trying to trace the epistemological root. Darshana of Nyaya as an example he gives. Nyaya is one of the famous Indian schools on Indian logic. So he means the view of Nyaya school, the perception of reality according to Nyaya, and so the philosophical theory of Nyaya. The school or system may be spiritual or materialistic. So we'll be seeing that different kinds of philosophy, not all philosophy are spiritual, or some of them are even atheistic, theistic, all combinations are there. It is a darshana or view or perception of reality. So perception here does not mean direct knowledge like the seeing of colors or the hearing of sounds, but a mental view. So it's basically a viewpoint of uh, of the reality. Closely related to the term philosophy is the term metaphysics. There are subtle differences, but both terms are also used interchangeably. Again, going to the etymological sources of these terms. So, metaphysics is derived from two terms from Greek. Meta, which means beyond or after. Physics means nature, or so it derived from meta and physica, which means beyond nature. So any analysis or inquiry beyond the basic understanding of nature is what the word metaphysics is. Similarly, in Sanskrit, there is a term called anvīkṣaṇa, so which is derived from the roots anvak, which means seeing, which means following, and iksha means view. So this also means that a perspective that follows some observation. Okay, and here are some testimonial meanings on this. So, for example, Ashtadhyayi, which is one of the major grammatical treatises on Sanskrit. So it is hearing followed by seeing and completely engage in the thinking about its purpose. So that is what metaphysics is all about. And similarly, Amarakosha says that it is inquiry, punishment. It gives you synonyms for different. Amarakosha is a great thesaurus wherein it uses these words related concept of logic, science, artha, scripture, etc. And Kautalya in his Arthashastra gives one of the most formal definitions, one of the earliest definitions. Here he calls this anvīkṣaṇa has ever been esteemed as the lamp of all sciences, the resource of all actions, and the shelter of all virtues. So he glorifies it, and he says that it is like the illuminator of all other branches of knowledge, the medium for all actions, and the protector of all the principles. Okay. So this is what metaphysics is. Somehow in the recent years, so the value of metaphysics, particularly in the last 2 centuries, has been downplayed for whatever reasons. We will try to discuss the actual relevance of it, particularly in today's context as well, and the emerging space of AI and in the new scientific revolutions. So we'll discuss all those concepts going forward. Again, this is what Swami Abhedananda, one of the direct disciples of Swami Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and one of the great saints, contemporaries of Swami Vivekananda. So he tries to explain what is true philosophy. So the true aspect is highlighted here. So he talks it in terms of 3 major areas. The first, it must coordinate ultimate results arrived at by special branches of knowledge, which call science, and taking up the conclusions, it must form the widest generalizations possible. So first, philosophy is basically a scientific approach. That is what is highlighted by Swami Vedananda here, and then it must, and that science how it is arrived at it by coordinating all the results of the acquired knowledge. We saw that metaphysics, so it is something that follows knowledge. So the second point is that true philosophy must investigate the realm of knowledge and trace its source. So we should go to the roots of knowledge. So to identify the authenticity and the reliability of the information that we gather, and how, so we have to go back to its roots. And philosophy which does this is called as the epistemology or science of knowledge. And the third major highlight that he is making is the third function which true philosophy performs is that it loads our minds into the realm of the absolute. So it is basically helping us reach out to the absolute, the highest state of consciousness, which we may call it as God or truth or whatever name we would like to give. So this helps us take a step towards that ultimate reality. Again, according to our Sanatana Dharma, the eternal spiritual wisdom, true philosophy is jnana, and that jnana is based on reason, anubhava, and faith. So yukti, experience, and shraddha. All three together provides a holistic, experiential or experience-driven wisdom, and that is the what is considered as true philosophy. Following it, we'll just basically touch upon what Sri Krishna Chandra Bhattacharya, another great exponent and subject matter experts in Indological studies. So he again talks in terms of four major grades of philosophical thought. So we thought that we understand that philosophy is trying to understand the reality by acquiring knowledge, and it's basically inquiry into the reality, inquiry into truth, right? So it can be at an empirical level, which is based on trying to observe the external world, the world that we live in through our senses. That is one source of fact that we acquire, and followed by pure objective thought. So one is the one is the external world. The second is how do we internalize it from a subjective point of view. The objective world is internalized as a subjective point of view, and then the third step is the spiritual thought. So it is basically the inquiry of the spiritual thought, and finally the last step is the transcendent thought. So in the spiritual thought itself, we get into a stage where the subject and the object is not specifically differentiated. So, and finally we transcend the states, and it is the final state of the absolute truth. There's a close correspondence which we can make this four-step approach by Sri Bhattacharya into the four karya avasthas of our consciousness, which is part of our spiritual philosophies. For example, in the Mandukya Upanishad, we talk about the four states of human consciousness: the Jagrat Avastha, which is a waking state; the Swapna Avastha, the dream state; then we have the Sushupti Avastha, the sleep state; and finally we have the fourth or the holistic state, which is the state of trance. So The empirical thought, again, which is external facing, corresponds to the waking state of operation. The the second state, which is the pure objective thought, probably can be mapped to a dream state. Then there is a sleep state wherein the subject object differentiation vanishes, and then there is a state of trance where we transcend all the individual quarters and move into the holistic space. So this is another beautiful explanation of a graded scheme of philosophical thought. With this, we move on to the different branches of philosophy. So Bhattacharya again classifies at a very, very broad level into three major streams. One is called object philosophy, then it is called a subject philosophy and truth philosophy. Vastu darshana, Atma darshana, and Satya darshana. So Vastu darshana is about the objective side of life. The Atma darshana is the subjective side of life, and truth is the epistemological side of life. So we can call it as also as ontology, spirituality, and epistemology. These three divisions further branches into multiple subdomains or focus areas within philosophy. So we have domains like ontology, epistemology, psychology, axiology, cosmology, theology, soteriology, eschatology, ethics, aesthetics, etymology, ritual science, hermeneutics, etc. So all these are individual focus areas, but they are not watertight compartments. Metaphysics integrates them all into a whole, one integrated whole. So it is a cost cutting domain. That's why it is called as metaphysics. It is not specific to a domain. It transcends beyond all these domains. We'll now understand each of these terms, what these terms mean. Again, here I will try to provide wherever possible the Greek and the Sanskrit etymological roots, so that we understand the context in which these terms mean. So etymology is a very, very important part of branch of philosophy, as we just saw here, because thought and word are always inseparable, and word and concept are again inseparable. So when a term has been used for historic, in philosophy, it becomes most of them becomes like a technical jargons, or what we call it as keywords or technical terms, and they have been most of them they have been called use these terms with some etymological roots or with some context in mind. So if the more we appreciate the etymological understanding of these roots of these terms, we'll be able to appreciate or relate to the concept much better. So that is the idea here. So philosophy, we already talked about it, is philos plus sophia, or tattva darshana is sattva plus darshana. And then we talk about ontology. What is ontology? Ontology is the study of being, or study of existence, or study of what exists. So it is derived from ontos, being, and logia, study. Similarly, the Sanskrit component, we can call it as sattva vidya. Sattva means realm or reality or existence, and vidya is the study about it or the science about it. Then epistemology. Epistemology is again derived, while ontology talks about what exists. So the study about things or objects of existence. Epistemology is study about epistemes or topics of knowledge. So the how we know about existence. So the noble aspect of existence. So it is called as epistemology because it is derived from the word episteme, which is knowledge, and logia or logos, which is the study. The Sanskrit, we can call it as it is derived from satya and vidya. So it is a study of truth. Satya means truth and vidya means study. So it is a satya vidya, which is the study of truth. So moving on, I mean, there are some typos here in the Sanskrit. I will correct them. And sorry about that. And then here we are moving on to the next domain, which is aesthetics. Aesthetics is a study of the senses and sense-related uh, uh, topics. So it is again derived from eschalos, which is aesthekitos, or however we pronounce it in Greek. So here we can call it as rasa alangara. Rasa is the taste or the sensual taste, and alangara is the beautification or the decoration around it. So it is both the art and science of rasa, or the sensory emotion. Then we move on to ritual science. Ritual science is called as kriyavidya. So it is derived from kr, which means an action or ritual or act, and vidya. Similarly, in the Greek version, it is derived from airotelsia or ritual. I mean, not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. But the idea is that it also represents a sacred act. When talking about etymology of etymology itself, etymology is derived from the root etymos, which means root or cause, and logos or logia, which means study. You can call it in Sanskrit as Yukti Shastra. I mean, Vyutpatti Shastra, that means how the origin of the study of origins, or study of how words originate. Metaphysics we have already seen. Cosmology is again the study of the cosmos or the universe or the Brahmanda. So it is derived from cosmos or universe, and logia study. We can call it as prapancha vijñāna, prapancha vidya. Soteriology is again term specifically more widely used in the Occidental schools or the Western or Christian schools, where it talks about moksha dharma, basically the signs of salvation or the final state or liberation, or however we want to call it. And then we move on to hermeneutics. So artha karana, or we can also call it as mimamsa, which is basically the trying to understand or derive meaning from words. So the way we interpret knowledge. So knowledge has been acquired when you say collective human consciousness over several millennia or thousands of years, right from the Vedic period. In the Indian side, similarly, we have the Greek and other sides where knowledge has been acquired and documented in form of various scriptures, both Shruti, Smriti, etc. Right. So we have a lot of knowledge documented in human understandable language now. So now, how we derive interpretation and arrive at a philosophical interpretations is what this hermeneutics is all about. Eschatology is again a very important branch of science, and this term is more widely used in Western philosophy. So it is a study of the final state of collective consciousness, the final the end state of the world or the sattva. So while soteriology is more at an individual level of this final emancipation of this one, eschatology is more towards what will happen to the entire world, whether
whether there is a cyclic model or a spiral model or a linear model of how this world, this evolving world will end or recur back or whatever that is, right? All that cosmology, today it comes under cosmology. Definitions and debates or speculations will are part of this at a larger scale. Axiology is again study of values, ethics, etc. And theology is a study around the role of who's God, what is God, and the relationship between God, world, and man. Talking about, debating about its existence, non-existence, relationship of how all these three entities are there. So this is where religion and philosophy shake their hands. And moving on, we have psychology, which started as psychology, is also today called as the philosophy of the mind, or more in scientific terms as the consciousness studies. So it understands the role of consciousness in as a realm of reality, and what it is and how it impacts our living. And then ethics is again part of axiology. Beyond these domains, there are also domains which are today becoming very popular. It is called as meta-ontology, meta-metaphysics, which talks about the bigger picture of these domains. So, for example, meta-ontology is defined as a branch of philosophy that examines the foundations and methodology of ontology, the study of being in existence. So it tries to, ontology is the study of being in existence. So meta-ontology tries to understand how the ontological knowledge is derived from. Similarly, metaphysics is a philosophical study of foundations and methodology of metaphysics itself. It examines questions about the nature of metaphysical inquiry, such as what metaphysics is, what its subjects should be, and what methods are appropriate for metaphysical investigation. This is becoming a very important topic because in the last, as I said, last 200, 300 years, metaphysics has been downplayed, particularly with the emergence of the philosophy of science and science on. But thanks to AI and quantum physics and other areas, the domain or the relevance of metaphysics is again surging back, and that's how today science meets uh, metaphysics, or meta science, or physics meets metaphysics. So these are again a modern version of definition of all these topics, as we already discussed. I'm just skipping them. With this, we now move on to the next topic. We'll be talking about the uh, geographical classification of philosophy. How the philosophy evolved in different geographies, from its ancient antiquity till the latest uh, parts. So this is the focus of this uh, space. So the geographical classification, if you look at it, we can broadly classify under two major buckets. One is the Oriental philosophy, which is also called as the Eastern philosophy, and on the other side is the Occidental philosophy, which is also called as the Western philosophy. So Eastern philosophy includes the Indian philosophy, including Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, all these popular. In India, philosophy is very tightly integrated with the religion. Uh, Even atheistic schools will follow on, will come under religious idea, because even to deny it's also a form of a religion here. So deny God is also a form of religion here. So everything comes under a religious umbrella here. Then we have Chinese philosophy, which talks about Taoism, Confucianism, and the Buddhist philosophy, which spread from India to China. Then we have Japanese philosophy. Of course, we also have a Tibetan philosophy. I missed to highlight it here, which is also predominantly the extended version of Buddhist philosophy. Uh, And then we have a Japanese philosophy, which they have the Shintoism and the Buddhism, etc. Coming to the Occidental philosophy, we start with the ancient schools like the Greek, the Jewish or the Israeli school, and the Persian schools. And then there's a medieval philosophy, which is again driven mostly by religious or theological ideas, being the Roman or the Christian medieval philosophy, or the Arabic Islamic philosophies. And moving on, we come to the modern European philosophy, which is also sometimes called as a continental philosophy. Um, Idealism, materialism, etc. Then there is a postmodern philosophy, which is the analytical philosophy, predominantly from the American geography. And there's a continental philosophy, the European philosophy that we talked about, and the philosophy of science, which is more of a global, cutting across all the regions. Okay, so this is more of an indicative list. We'll be talking about each of them in detail. Again, these are not watertight compartments. This is what is highlighted in the quotations that I have given here. For example, Swami Vivekananda very clearly says that from the Orient came the voice which once told the world that if a man possesses everything that is under the sun and does not possess the spirituality, what avails it? That is the Oriental type. The other is the Occidental type. As I said, the Oriental is very spiritual or religious in its context. Each of these types has its grandeur, has its glory. The present adjustment will be the harmonizing, the mingling of the two ideals. To the Oriental, the world of spirit is as spiritual. The Oriental finds everything he wants or hopes for in it he finds all that makes life and real to him. To the To the Occidental, he is a dreamer. To the Oriental, the Occidental is a dreamer, playing with the ephemeral toys, and he laughs to think that the grown up men and women should make so much of a handful of matter which they will have to leave sooner or later. So, which means is that while Indian philosophy talks about the longer term purusharthas, which is basically focusing on spirituality or moksha dharma, Western philosophy uh, has its own focus areas, but both are not watertight compartments. Both have their pros and cons. So, holistic need is to have the best out of both. So again, there's one more quotation which says that who knows himself and the other shall hear and also recognize Orient and the Occidental are no more to be separated. So there is a very important message here saying that these watertight compartments of saying that this is Oriental, this is Occidental, this is Western, this is need not be the case. We need to take a more integral approach and as a famous Tirukkural soil, Eppurul Yar Yarvai Keppinum Appurul Meipurul Kanbadarivu. So we should take every input and scrutinize it and internalize it for our inquiry. So this is again a recap of whatever we discussed. The Oriental and the Occidental are foundational divisions. The Oriental covers Indian, Chinese, and Japanese. Occidental organized into ancient, medieval, modern, postmodern. Philosophical schools of Indian, Chinese. So we talked about Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, etc. Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism, etc. In Japanese, it is Shintoism and Buddhism. Western traces evolution from the Greco-Roman roots to the contemporary movements. And postmodern distinction is more of analytical and continental philosophy of science, and more recently, the digital philosophy or AI-related philosophies. We see some of these philosophies extend the geographical regions like Buddhist philosophy, the Christian philosophy, the Abrahamic, the Islamic philosophies, etc. Of course, philosophy of science is a cross-cutting across the globe. Now, talking about the history of philosophy, to understand any domain, history plays a critical role. So, We saw the geography side of philosophy. Now we'll see the history side of philosophy. There are 4 historical eras at a high level speaking, talking of the axial age, the scholastic development, the systematic philosophy, and the specialization and globalization. Okay. Another observation is there are a lot of parallel developments. Um, so simultaneous evolution in East and West. So there has been a parallel evolution of philosophical thought right from both in the Greek world as well as from the Indian world. Of course, there has always been a lot of exchange, knowledge exchange between these geographies as well. Okay, and there is also global convergence. So I'm trying to give a balanced representation wherever possible for both the Oriental and Occidental schools. So this is the overall chart. For better resolution, I'll try to blow it up. So we have the ancient era, the Oriental level with Vedic philosophy, Upanishadic philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, Jain philosophy, Taoism of China, Confucianism of China, then pre-Socratic Greece, classical philosophy. So we are now from Oriental, we are now trying moving into the Occidental. We are talking about a timeline. These are also again indicative timelines. Of course, some of them are debatable. I don't want to get in the debate part of the historicity of the timelines. 1500 is a very what I mean. One of the estimates of the Vedic philosophy. Of course, I personally feel it is much earlier to this, but going by the common or the popular understanding. And then we follow the Upanishadic philosophy, then the Buddhist philosophy around 500 BCE. Parallelly, we have a Jain philosophy. They are more contemporaries, Jain philosophy and Buddhism. Of course, Mahavira is the last Tirthankara, but Buddha is the first founder of Buddhism. So both have a very ancient past. Of course, 500 B, they could be much older than this. And these are very conservative estimates. Taoism in China is again a very, very ancient philosophy. And then Confucianism and the pre-Socratic Greek philosophy coming to the world. Then we have the classical Greek philosophy and then the Hellenistic philosophy. All these are on the Occidental side or the Western geographies. Then we have the Zoroastrianism and the Persian aspect of it. And then we have the Jewish or the Hellenistic philosophy. Moving on to the medieval era, we have the Vedantic schools, the rich philosophical traditions of Vedanta, called also the Uttaramimamsa. Then in Buddhism, we have the Mahayana school emerging in India, China, Tibet, etc. And then Buddhism also emerging in China through the Zen version of it. Neo-Confucianism is there. Then Shinto synthesis is there in Japan. Then emergence of Sikh philosophy around 1500 BCE. And then comes the Christian philosophy, beginnings of Christian philosophy, which is called as the patristic philosophy around 400 CE. And then it takes the term of scholasticism. We'll talk about what all these means eventually in around 1000 CE. And then the golden age of Islamic philosophy around 900 CE. And then Judaism, scholasticism of it around 1200 CE. And then coming back to the modern era, it starts, widely it is rooted to Descartes, the father of rationalism, and he's also called as the father of modern science. Rene Descartes, the father of analytical geometry. Then we have empiricism, while Locke and Lume, German idealism, Immanuel Kant, Hegel, etc. Materialism of Marxist materialism. Then Japanese Confucianism. Then Hindu reform movements in India, and the Kyoto School, etc. And moving on the contemporary era, which is from the 20th century onwards to present, we have the Occidental schools of analytical philosophy, continental philosophy. There are different Bertrand Russell, Wittgenstein, Sartre, etc. Philosophy of science of Popper and Kuhn, uh, defining the philosophical frameworks for science. And then Confucianism, taking a new aspect, and then Neo Vedanta with the Ramakrishna Mission Movement, Chinmaya Mission Movement, and various other parallel evolution of the Neo Vedanta. Then modern Buddhist philosophy, postmodern philosophy, digital age philosophy, etc. Moving on, this provides you a mind map of the different philosophical concepts, both the Occidental and the Oriental philosophy. So we again talk about the medieval Christian philosophy, where Augustine and Aquinas, etc., are some of the names here. These are all just examples to provide in a mind map. Okay, then we have the ancient schools of Greek and Jewish philosophy, Plato, Aristotle, the Stoics, then the materialism of Persian schools, then the modern idealism, continental philosophy, analytical philosophy, etc. Looking to the Oriental side, we have Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Taoism of China, Confucianism, again Buddhism in Chinese versions, and Japanese version of Buddhism, etc. This is another way of providing historiographic look at the same concepts that we have looked at. This is just a visual representation in a different way for us to easier grasp it. So I'll just leave it for a second for you to internalize it. Moving on, we look at the different classifications of philosophy as a recap in terms of the chronological framework. So we have the ancient, medieval, modern, and contemporary, and we have the regional aspect of it: the Indian, Chinese, Japanese, the Western areas like the Greek metaphysics, medieval theology, etc. Then transcultural exchanges like the Buddhist diffusion across Asia, and then Islamic preservation of Greek thoughts, global science of philosophy, global science and philosophy. Then the rise of scholasticism in the medieval period, idealism and materialism, debates around that, and contemporary philosophies. Next, we will be talking about the Oriental philosophies, the philosophy from the Oriental schools, particularly the Indian philosophy. So this is going to be the next topic. I will park it for the next video session. Stay tuned. So I once again request, thank you for patiently going through, sitting through this session. Do share your constructive criticism. It will be of great help to fine tune my understanding knowledge, as well as to correct more for the subsequent sessions. So any feedback will always help. So thanks again. Once again, I do my prayer. ஞானத்தால் தொழுவார் உனை ஞானிகள் ஞானத்தால் தொழுவார் உனை நாணலே ஞானத்தால் தொழுவார் தொழுகொண்டு ஞானத்தாய் உனை நாணிந்து சகனா பவது சகனோ குணத்து சகவீரியம் கரவாவகை தேஜஸ்வினாவதீதமஸ்து மா வித்விஷாவகை ஓம் சாந்தி சாந்தி சாந்தி. திருச்சிற்றம்பலம்.